Command Control presents Hardwire Heartache, Synthetic Love Stories, Episode 5, Defiance. The roar of the rain thrown off metal fire escapes, empty trash can lids and cold concrete, covering the splashing footsteps of Conlon. He slipped hurriedly from shadow to shadow, his upper body now covered in a tattered piece of dark blue fabric that used to be a Sakanico flag. When you live the kind of life that Conlon has, you quickly pick up a keen sense for danger. He wasn't 100% sure the goons were looking for, but he wasn't in a hurry to find out either. He'd been narrowly avoiding them for the past 2 nights, taking brief, sleepless moments of respite along empty shipping containers and trash cans. Drawing in a deep breath, he slipped into the empty space behind the partially working neon sign and a wet brick wall of a dockside warehouse. Moments later, a group of goons slithered past, armed to the teeth. After he was sure they were gone, he popped out of his hiding spot just in time to run smack dab into 2 familiar faces.
Well. Look what the cat dragged in.
Is that the kid from the other night? Mondo, old boy, looks like he just can't get enough of us.
These 2 assholes are known as solar sailors. The ships use large sails to capture the solar energy and propel the engines. Ships were almost always loaded to the brim with firepower, some legal and some banned by the Galactic Fleet. Yeah, sure. They pretend they're just merchants and on the up and up, trying to protect themselves. But everyone knows they're pirates and opportunistic scumbags.
Hey, fellas, I'd love to spend some more time with you, but I have a paying customer waiting on me.
Well, it looks like you better cancelling it. You're gonna be real tied up with us tonight.
The sailor reached out and grabbed Conlon by the hair,
Guys, please.
yanking him off toward the shipping containers. As soon as they were in the shadows, the first sailor spun Conlon around and slammed him against the wet steel of a massive shipping container, smashing his face against the rusty, paint-chip-crusted surface.
Guys, please, I'm begging you. Just let me go this time. There's heat on me. Goons. You don't want to get involved.
The 2 sailors paused, if only momentarily, and looked at each other before black-toothed grins crept greasily across their faces.
Oh, really? Well, it looks like we're the ones getting paid tonight, eh, Mondo? Bound to be reward for catching this little fishy.
That's smart thinking, Harlan. Oh, we can have a bit of fun before tossing him to the lizards, right?
Harlan unsheathed the long, slender blade and ran it through the stretch of rope that held Conlon's pants up. His buddy Mundo also reached to undo his own belt as Harlan's blade inched closer to Conlon's throat. In that terrifying, helpless moment, subservient brainwashing he had been under since his childhood was shattered. Conlon spun effortlessly in place, grabbing Harlan's blade and plunging it deep into Mundo's chest. A silent moment passed before Mundo's pants fell to the ground, followed by his lifeless body. His wide, empty eyes burned into Conlon's memory.
I'm gonna make you suffer for that, you paperless piece of filth.
Harlan took control of Conlon's blade hand, pinning it behind him as heavy, brutal blows followed from his free fist, smashing Conlon's eye socket. He could feel the back of his head bashing against the metal container as blows began raining down on him. After eating a few of the punches, Conlon ducked his head to the side at the last second, and Harlan's massive fist went full bore into the shipping container. The sailor grimaced, and before he could cock his hand back again, Conlon slipped from between him and the shipping container and spun around to headlock him from behind. The sailor thrashed as he tried to get Conlon off his back. Conlon began thrusting the blade into the sailor wherever he could get a clean shot. Arlen gurgled and spat out blood before falling to the ground. Conlon's eye had already swollen shut as he struggled to maintain consciousness. With his one good eye, he stared down at the carnage beneath him. A wave of emotions washed over him. The terror of not knowing what to do next, and the shock of the violence that he now knew he was capable of, bubbled up to the surface in a sobbing outburst. Just as he began to gather his composure, he felt the cold barrel of a blaster rifle at the base of his skull. The slimy, hissing sound grew louder as it approached his ear.
Hands up. Nice and slow.
Conlon's jaw set and his eyes stared angrily forward as he tucked the blade into his arm and raised his hand slowly. The goon stood up straight and went to reach for Conlon's hand, letting the barrel of the blaster slip ever so slightly. In a flash of adrenaline and anger, Conlon spun around, screaming as he grabbed the barrel and knocked it away just in time for the blaster to discharge with a loud zap. With the other hand, he freed the blade, still wet with the blood of the sailors at his feet, and buried in the neck of the goon. It howled out as Conlon took hold of the blaster and aimed it at the other two goons coming down the container gap. He held the body of the goon he had taken out in front of him as a shield, and it managed to absorb a few blasts before it completely dissolved in the clear ooze that now coated Conlon. He opened fire on the remaining goons, blasting wildly down the corridor, and sprinted to take cover behind the corpse of one of the sailors. Nothing. No movement. No sound. All of a sudden, there came a loud thudding from inside the container he had been pressed against earlier, startling him. A long moment went by, and the thudding grew louder. Conlon already had an idea of what it was. Some living cargo desperate to escape. He figured it would be a bit before the cleaners showed up and hauled them off to wherever his fate might be.
To hell with it. If this is the end, at least I can give whatever's in here a fighting chance.
Conlon struggled to raise his battered body and grasped for the blaster rifle, aiming at the lock on the door of the container, loosening the trigger as he ducked around the side just in case. He could hear booted footsteps slowly emerging from the container, a pair of them coming toward him. He raised the blaster rifle to meet the unknown and waited. Poking her clean-shaven head around the corner, she quickly ducked back and called out.
Corporal 01 reporting for duty. Are you in need of assistance?
Conlon lowered the rifle and called out.
There's no helping me now. But you're free. Do yourself a favor and get lost before they round you up too.
A long moment of silence followed before the deep feminine voice responded.
Negative. No man left behind, sir.
Conlon squinted his eye at the response and stepped around the corner. As soon as he did, another identical female to the one he was now facing moved quickly to him and started running a medical diagnostic scanner over wounds. Conlon was too stunned to react to the medic as he peered into the gloom of the container. There must have been 100 of them. 7 feet tall with muscular builds. An entire company of soldiers genetically grown and sold off as slaves, ready to do the bidding of whoever had purchased them.
Could I interest you in some pants, soldier?
Conlon looked down at his blood and goop-soaked body, just now realizing he had lost his pants in the scuffle.
I'll take whatever you can spare, but we need to run. That firefight will bring the cleaners any minute.
Corporal 1 motioned to the back as the soldier drug a footlocker. Inside was a new set of fatigues, boots, and a rain poncho. He scooped them up as if his body ached for the items and hastily began putting them on, using the old flag he was wearing to try to wipe himself clean before stepping into the first set of real clothes he had ever worn. The medic was zapping his face with a medical laser in order to clean and close the wound before applying a dermal layer. Conlon winced and pulled away.
I thought it could wait until we got the hell out of here, but I gotta know. Who or what the hell are you people exactly?
We are a fully functional, fully trained assault company, also known as Matchbox Soldiers.
Conlon had heard of Matchbox Soldiers before. Microwaves that were born and raised for the sole purpose of combat. Most of the time, these poor suckers would get packed into a can like sardines and dumped on some frontier planet to be used as cannon fodder.
So what? You're just gonna close yourself back up in this box and get shipped off to your deaths? You're free!
Most of the soldiers looked bewildered at having any kind of choice, content to simply complete whatever directive their commanding officer had for them. CO1 was the only one who seemed to actually be weighing the options. She began to pace in front of the container momentarily, before abruptly stopping in front of Conlon.
Protocol states that the individual who breaks the seal on the matchbox is the commanding officer, sir.
Conlon squinted his eye and momentarily lost focus as he reached up and touched his now healed eye. Looking beyond CO1 and back into the foul-smelling container, he noticed all the soldiers now saluting.
Me? I'm just a paperless microwave from New Borneo. I can't lead a group of soldiers. I can't even fight.
CO1 looked around the side of the container at the absolute carnage Conlon had just left in his wake and lifted an eyebrow at Conlon. Sirens could be heard in the distance now, at first masked by the rain, then louder.
Fine then. I order you to retreat. Beat it. Save yourselves. Figure out a way off this shithole and live normal lives somewhere.
CO1 sighed at the order, and even as it left his mouth, he knew that what he was saying was all but impossible. Having spent the last 12 months as a free microwave, he knew it was arguably worse than being a slave. He looked up at the sails of the pirate vessel docked a few spaces down. The spark of an idea had made his eyes widen.
All right then. You want to fight? I've got one for you.
Standing in front of the matchbox container, Conlon did his best impression of a military general, standing tall in front of the saluting soldiers before pointing at the solar skiff.
All right, listen up. Lock and load. Your mission is to commandeer that ship. There's no telling how many pirates are aboard, but we should have the element of surprise. This is our only chance at freedom. We'll be fugitives, and there's no going back. So anyone who wants to close this door and head off to whatever fresh hell they have planned for you, go right ahead. The rest of you, charge.
The soldiers all roared in response and sprung into action, distributing weapons among themselves and charging ahead with CO1 in the lead. Conlon found himself swept up in the charge, and just as they were boarding the solar skiff, he noticed the cleaners arrive on scene.
Form a blockade. Nobody gets on or off this ship, understood?
Four of the matchbox soldiers took up defensive positions behind crates in the loading bay as the rest of the company charged into the vessel. Conlon made his way in and looked up at the ceiling as if waiting for something.
No alarms. No commotion. They either don't know we're here or the ship is empty.
What are your orders, Commander?
Shoot to kill. Show them no mercy. They won't be showing us any either.
Conlon's eyes narrowed, and he motioned for the army to split equally down the two corridors that made their way around the ship. Both units crept slowly with their weapons at the ready down the dingy corridors, coming first to the sleeping quarters on one side and an infirmary on the other. The sleeping quarters looked like it could sleep at least 100 men with sleeping pods stacked 5 high and ladders between each row. Maybe 20 sailors in total lay sleeping as Conlon gave the nod to terminate them. Most of them went quietly, but halfway through the execution, the noise stirred up a few of the pirates, and the firefight broke out on deck.
Take them down before they sound
The sound of the alarm drowned out his next words as another firefight broke out behind him. There was a rear guard getting fired on by the cleaners. Colin wanted to run back and help fight them off, but he had to maintain command or the operation would be compromised. The secondary unit pressed forward and began breaching the control room. As they entered, they found the captain using his harem girls as human shields. The terrified squeals of the microwaves reverberated throughout the ship.
Commander, we've got civvies on the deck. Please advise.
Colin stammered a bit as a sound of fighting surrounded him. He looked back down the corridor to see the soldiers retreating into it from the loading dock and froze.
Take a deep breath, Commander. You're doing just fine. The civvies are probably our people. Should we shoot to kill, or do you want to belay the order?
Conlon nodded rapidly and then shook his head as if trying to come up with the proper answer. He took in a huge breath of air and closed his eyes, releasing the air in a massive sigh before opening his eyes again.
Don't kill the civilians. Minimum casualties. They didn't choose to be here, but they might choose to fight for their freedom.
Freedom fighters. Is that what they were? Conlon hadn't thought much about what would happen if they had actually succeeded. But as he watched the soldiers operate, it was plain to see that neither the solar sailors or the cleaners stood a chance against such a well-oiled machine of a company, if they kept going. Only minutes went by before the last order was given. CO1 came trudging down the corridor, dragging the body of a now-deceased captain. A sizzling hole between his eyes made it pretty easy to see how he went out.
We're performing a sweep of the ship now, but we're a bit foggy on what to do after that. Orders?
Take up battle stations and seal the hull. Let's get to the hyperspace gate before they can follow us.
No sooner than the order was given, Conley could feel the ship pulling away from the dock. The sails shot up like the dorsal fin of some massive space creature as small arms fire ricocheted off the hull. Before Sakanako's drones could follow them, the ship slid into the glowing blue hyperspace lane and vanished in a streak of light. CO1 sat at the controls and smirked as she hacked and deleted the ship's old manifest and credentials.
We've made it to the hyperspace lane. That means we are officially pirates, and you are officially our captain. We need a heading and a name. What are your orders, sir?
Set course for New Borneo. I have unfinished business there. As for the ship, we'll call her Defiance.
Toru sat at a large smoked glass desk in a glass room adorned with bamboo plants in the corners. The room was otherwise Spartan in design, minimalistic and sleek, looking as if it were suspended in a dark, star-filled expanse of space. His fingers ran the length of his silken suit lapel idly as he inhaled deeply, staring out into the emptiness. Exhaling with a grin, he pressed the comms link on his desk.
I must admit, I'm surprised you contacted me. You're either very brave, very wise, or very stupid. Maybe a mixture of the three.
Mizukawa smirked at the voice on the other end, savoring the fear in the person's voice as he turned his head to the side and cracked his neck.
Yes, of course. You will help me retrieve my property, and no harm will come to you or your friends. I give you my word. Keep me updated. And remember, it's best if no one suspects anything. If they catch wind of what you're doing, not even someone as protective as you can assure their safety.
As the newly minted Captain Conlon speeds off to dole out some long overdue justice to the scumbags on New Borneo, Teruo Mizukawa seems to have found inroads to finally get what he wants. But who is the mysterious new contact? Could it be someone on the Wraith? And if so, who would be foolish enough to trust him? Find out next time on Hardwire Heartache, Episode 6, Radiant City.